Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Patterson Farm Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting for May 9th, 2024. My name is Dennis Stedman. I have two other committee members with me. Gentlemen, you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure, Ron Schmid, good to see you all.
Hi, I'm Joe Camerata.
Thank you. Uh, there are six members of this committee. Uh, so right now we do not quite have a quorum. Jennifer Stark, uh, a member of the committee, is running late, and we expect her to join us about 30 minutes into the meeting. So in the interim, we won't take any formal actions as a committee, but we can proceed with sharing information. And if you've tuned in from the public, welcome. We value and appreciate your interest tremendously. I'm going to share my screen to bring up the agenda. And I hope that is visible to
Yep,
everyone.
we can see it.
Very good. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. Again, informational only, as we do not have a quorum. The review and approval of the minutes from our very first meeting on April 11th will postpone until we have a quorum. This next item is a discussion of the new processes for future public meetings. Dave Kratzer earlier this evening sent me a note apologizing that he could not make it tonight as planned, but I have some information from David that we can utilize to lead this discussion. So let me bring up that information. Bear with me. Okay. Because this will have an impact on how we conduct our business going forward. Joe and Ron, can you see that?
Yes.
So the key point here is that the township boards and meeting and committees have been operating in this public Zoom format for some time since the pandemic began, and it's been a very rich resource for the community and for all of us. However, with the pandemic obviously well behind us, we're about to make a change, and that is that as you can see in Dave's email, committees are expected to meet in person at the township building, and that is the new position of the township, and really of the township attorneys and multiple attorneys to meet sunshine laws and Pennsylvania regulatory guidance. So there will be a Zoom option available through a township account for remote participation by any committee members that cannot be in the public building. And of course, I'm on a couple committees for the township, and I know we have members that work in New York or work in Philadelphia, and getting back to Lower Makefield and to the township building on any given evening isn't possible. So they will still be able to connect via Zoom, which is convenient and efficient, but at least a portion of the members of each meeting need to be at the township building. It will be a self-managed account. We will lose some of the IT support that we've had in managing these and breakout rooms, etc. So I'm sure we'll learn to some degree as we go, but we will be meeting in the township building. And our next meeting in June will be at 7:30. And if the public's to participate, they, along with committee members, should come to the township building. There will be a Zoom connection available for members who can't make it, as well as for the public. And that'll be self-administered by the committee. So just that's going to represent a bit of a change. And I think it's an efficiency change. It's a money saving change. And I just hope that it continues to work as smoothly as a committee. We get to work as smoothly as we have in the past. So, Ron, Joe, any comments,
fine.
questions about that?
I'm good with that.
I mean,
No,
I'm
Dennis,
going to.
that's the way the historical commission works. We were using a private Zoom, but we have some of our members zooming in and some that were there in person.
Okay. And how was the public coming in for your meetings?
So we didn't really have a lot of public, but so last night we had public participation, but they were in person.
Okay. And I think that is intended to be the primary method, but there will be a Zoom option. We'll have to figure some of that out a little more clearly for our next meeting. I'm on the farmland committee meeting. We're going in the same direction. We haven't done that yet in terms of how to best get the public involved, but we certainly will. And obviously in person at the township building is always the best. In-person communications are always more effective than these kinds of electronic supported ones. So it makes sense to me, and I think it's a move that whose time has come. So expect to hear some more about that before our June meeting. Also in this on this topic of some changing processes, it's my apologies. This is Supervisor Grenier. In one moment.
Dennis, you're muted.
He's talking to Dan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was Supervisor Grenier. He went to the township building for this meeting, which is this is our last meeting operating this way. So he was not aware of that. He thought the new process started tonight and not in June. So Dan will be joining us when he gets to log in. So the other topic in terms of change procedures with the township and our committees has to do with minutes. We do not need, here's my understanding from my communications with Dave Kratzer of the township. We do not need transcripts of these meetings. We do not need, which we've had that support from the township administrative staff. It'll be up to the secretary of the committee to compile minutes, which are summary minutes of topics discussed, action taken. It's not to try to track who asked what question who provided what answer. That's unnecessary. There still will be Zoom recordings of these meetings that are held on Zoom. I'm presuming most of them will be, since typically we'll have at least one member, if not more, connecting that way rather than in person. So that is another change in our processes from the township that are really taking effect tonight. I don't believe Janelle, the administrator who typically records or transcribes these meetings, will be doing that for us tonight. So I will take minutes in the absence of a secretary and issue those minutes to the committee for review. Any questions, dialogue on that?
Nope.
No. So let's, those are the minutes. Hang on, I'm trying to get to the right screen to share. So we're going to hold off on the review of the minutes and as well as the discussion of in nomination of electing a secretary. I think we need to wait till we have at minimum a quorum, if not a full committee, to discuss that. I will act as interim secretary in the meantime. Jennifer Stark is on the subcommittee on building protections and enhancements. We'll wait for her to join us, which we expect to be close to 8 o'clock. So what I'd like to do now is jump ahead to the sixth agenda item, which is an update from the Nonprofit Search Committee, of which the three of us present here are on that committee. I would like to pull up a summary report to that effect that we can utilize, and I'll ask Ron and Joe to whoever is we can discuss this. I always have trouble finding these documents when I need to share them. So the Nonprofit Search Subcommittee, this is our update for this evening. 3 points. Ron, you want to talk to this topic in terms of what's been accomplished since our first meeting last month?
Sure. I think Joe and I have both tried to pursue a variety of things, but so from my point of view, what I pursued was talking to Pano. We had some initial conversations, and they're willing to help us. But what I think is key here, Dennis, from my point of view, and I said it to you when you sent around that boilerplate, is all the criteria that you established in that boilerplate, which were the 7 criteria for looking for a not-for-profit to work with us on Patterson Farm. So that's, I think, absolutely essential to share with them and with other groups that have been identified. For example, Dan identified 6 groups. I'm sure Joe has identified others. We can now begin to get that out there and talk to people about what we're really looking for. With regard to Pano, they asked me to come back to them with some more information, and the more information I'm going to go back to them with is going to be those criteria, and pose it to them. 2 things. One is, are there existing 501c3s that could help us with this, and who are they, and can we get an introduction? And then 2, what do we need to do if we need to set up a new 501c3? And just for the heck of it, on their website, and I don't want to go through a lot of detail here, but they've got 13 things you need to do to set up a 501c. And I don't say this to imply that it's a daunting process, but frankly, I inherited a 501c3, and I know you guys have both worked on 501, but I didn't never set one up. And on their website, for example, you determine the purpose. We already did that. The structure, because there are a variety of structures you can use. Name the organization. You got to recruit incorporators, which is someone who signs the articles of incorporation, and get a president, treasurer, and secretary. You got to get a registered agent, which is a legal appointee, to get the legal notices. Prepare and file articles of incorporation with the Department of State. That's number 6. A key thing, as both of you know, is the EIN number, which allows you to open up the bank account, apply for 501c3 status, and submit the 990. Establishing the governing documents, so you got to get the bylaws done. Publish the incorporation. I was not aware of this one. You have to advertise our intention to file or the filing of articles of incorporation with the department one time in 2 newspapers in the county or the principal office. Then you go for the 501c3 tax exemption, which is the most complex thing, but you have 15 months to do that. So if we set something up, if we started from scratch, we'd have 15 months to do it. Number 12 is filing for the Pennsylvania sales tax status, and then register with the Pennsylvania Bureau of Corporations and Charitable Organizations. So there'd be a number of steps to accomplish if we were to set up a separate group. What Pano, I think, could help us with, if we have to go that route, is either A, providing overall counsel, or perhaps getting one of their consultants to help us do that. That would cost us a little money. So I'm just putting that on the table, that if we go that route, if we exhaust looking for partners, the 6 plus maybe others that are out there, and we have to go the other route, then I think we might want to spend some money to get an outside counselor to help us put this thing together. But I think, having said all that, I think the key thing here is all the criteria that you've established. And I would think, just jumping to next steps, is we identify people at some of the organizations that have already been identified. And if we know of someone there, send it to them, get their response. And at the same time, I'll pursue the Pano consultation and see what they can give us. That's kind of the way I see it. I think, frankly, from my point of view, putting this portfolio, the Patterson Farm portfolio, on existing organization might be difficult, maybe not impossible, but difficult, because they already have a portfolio. I mean, my initial instincts are we may need to set something up, which kind of demands that we move forward rapidly to do that, I would think, with those 13 steps you need to go through.
In the conversation with the Heritage Conservancy, and I pointed that out in the email, they said that they believe we're going to need to start one. They don't see, or at least in their knowledge, an organization that would be able to take over a task this large. I'll go back and check with the state. I've also had some conversations. So Ron, when we have that material together for sending out, I'll send it over. I mean, but the state, I mean, I've talked to them already about this topic before when we were doing the master plan. And I mean, they're in the same situation that we were. Like, they looked for nonprofits to come in and partner with them to manage existing properties. So what I think I could probably get from them is just some hints on how to do a search for existing partners, but I do agree that I think we should try to determine as quickly as possible, is there a potential partner out there? Otherwise, we have to form a 501c3, and the 13 steps are doable. I mean, it's been done a lot. I think the harder thing is finding the right people to be in that 501c3,
Yeah, I agree with that, Joe. It's really finding, the experienced, and passionate, individuals that have this kind of portfolio. Uh, but I think it only makes sense that we do the search, first,
Mhm.
as best we can. Uh, and that's the reason why we put together this summary document. Ron, you and Joe have seen that document. After discussion tonight, I'll circulate that to the full committee as well as to the township for their commentary, before we finalize it as the best summary, for that purpose. Uh, so I think that is the first step here. Let's do that search and see where see where we end up. That search will also include, in my estimation, uh, networking with individuals, et cetera, that may be the foundation of a start, right? Because we're going to need, the goal here is to have a nonprofit manage the entire property, since the township is not organized to do that, to oversee tenants and to identify tenants and help fundraise and raise volunteers that can help, develop the site. Right now, potentially, there's two tenants in the view, right? Certainly AOI is an anchor tenant in the arts, and the prospect of perhaps Patterson Farm Preservation as a tenant at the Satterswaith, arm or section of the site. So, I think there's opportunities here. If the township and this committee can make the progress that we've talked about in stage one, some of the initial, uh, the very fundamental kind of stabilization work of the site, then I think it's that much more attractive for an existing nonprofit to come in. So to some degree, there's a simultaneous equation here
Yeah.
in terms of how much effort, we can do before a nonprofit takes over, to help make it more attractive, and then, also, recruit that nonprofit that can take it the rest of the way.
Do you
So,
see, do you see, Dennis, the process, just a quick process check here. Do you see us potentially serving up two existing, I'm making this up, two existing not-for-profits to the township, with pros and cons of each, let's say, for the sake of discussion, and then a recommendation as to whether we support, let's say, one of those two after we've gone through six or eight of those, and or recommending that there are none and that we recommend setting up the not-for-profit. I mean, is that kind of the process you see going forward?
yeah, I think if we can identify prospective, organizations that have a fit, that are compatible with this, then it's going to involve multiple meetings with those organizations. To some degree, it's a search committee, and to some degree, it's a sales committee, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're trying to identify an appropriate organization, but we're also, uh, we'll have to provide the rationale and the argument as to why it's attractive to them, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little combination there, and, if we have, a couple alternatives, I agree with your statement completely. It would be recommending, one over another with pros and cons and advantages and disadvantages. And if there aren't any, then it's a recommendation of build instead of buy. And to me, that becomes a recruiting job then, because to build, it starts with the individual professionals in my book. The process of, registering with the state and 13 steps and all that, those are processes that can be done, and they've been done many times. It's really about the staff and identifying the professional or professionals that are willing to step up and entrepreneurially start a new organization. Okay. If anything else on this, I know.
Are we allowed to talk about next steps?
Well, I think Ron is following up with Pano, and I'm going to send out this summary document to the township and to the full committee to finalize.
Okay.
That document can be used then to by any of us to communicate, recruit, and explore the opportunity. Joe, you're going to follow up with the historical,
With the state, yeah. With
the state
yeah.
level.
Right.
We do have a list of other organizations from Dan
Right.
that we need to sort through. The three of us can divide those up if you'd like, or
I think
does
we just
anybody
divide
have
them up.
any particular connection to?
Do you have them there in front of you? Dennis, I don't have them right now, but
Sorry.
I don't have them right in
maybe
front
I do.
of
Hold
me
on.
now.
Nothing stuck out to me. I do have Dan's email here. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't. Nothing struck me on first read either. But
I was going to, Dennis, I was going to, even when I go back to Pano, surface these six and ask them
Yeah.
what they think.
right,
Good idea.
right.
You guys
Ron.
agree?
Yeah.
I mean, I would do that.
Okay.
I mean, one of them's Heritage Conservancy, which we've already spoken to.
Yeah.
But then there's a couple others. But yeah, I think there are good suggestions. And I mean, again, I think we're asking the question: would they be interested, or would they know someone who would be interested?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, once we
Exactly.
have your document, then once we have your finalized document, Dennis, then I'll send it to the state. Ryan can send it to Pano, and then we can kind of circle back to Dan 6 and say, how do you want to divide those up?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. Oh, it looks like Jennifer is joining us.
Just in time.
Just in time, Jennifer. Your timing it couldn't have been better.
So happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you. So if I could just bring up the agenda again. There we go. So Jennifer, welcome. I'd like to officially call the meeting to order now. We have a quorum, and I'd like to turn to the approval of the April 11 minutes, which were circulated to everyone. Have each of you had a chance to review those? And are there any suggested edits or corrections?
No.
No, I move to accept the minutes as presented.
I second.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. The April 11th minutes are approved. Jennifer, we've already discussed the new process for the public meetings that is being implemented by the township. Supervisor Grenier will be joining us shortly. He actually thought the process was starting tonight, so he drove to the township building. He's driving back and will be logging on shortly. And we're going to postpone the discussion and nomination of committee secretary since we don't have the full committee here. I think we should wait for that. Ron, Joe, and I just discussed the nonprofit search committee report.
Okay.
So at this point, it would be appropriate if you want to lead the discussion on the update of the building protections and enhancement subcommittee. And I can bring up that document.
Oh, yeah, sure, because I was opening that one as well.
Okay.
Okay, yes, Peter put together an overview of what we've done. So first off was the establishment of that Google Drive so that we all have a repository for documentation and anything that we generate within our committee to post so that everybody can see it. And the second thing that they've done, which I missed, it was last Thursday, was a walk around to take a look at some of the buildings and the conditions. And what we're finding is that a couple of the buildings, like Satherwaite, are not ready for just a nice paint job. There's some remediation that needs to be done. There's a lot of wood rot. And obviously you can't just paint rotted wood. You've got to address replacement of rotted parts. So we're looking at doing a more detailed inspection of what we're observing so that we can report back and craft a work list of what might be necessary for buildings that aren't paint ready.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that what you've done with eyes on is very important. And it's obvious when you look across the 15 buildings, it's not one size fits all. The condition varies externally and internally quite a bit. So the expertise that you and Peter and Fred can bring to that is important. That those insights will be valuable.
So as you can see, item 3, our goal is to bring back some information to the group for our June meeting.
Okay. And Jennifer, do you expect, based on what you've seen thus far, and I know you weren't there on that particular site, that there'll be a considerable number of buildings that can go forward with kind of that first rung remediation of paint and roof that as recommended in the master plan, and a minority of buildings that may need a broader attention, or what?
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of that?
I think that's the ratio. That ratio expectation is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jennifer, Joe, wasn't a condition assessment done as part of the development of the master plan, or was it just not detailed enough for
I
our use?
think that it wasn't detailed enough. We had them looking at such a broad scope. They did a tremendous amount of work in less than a year.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. I really appreciate this subcommittee effort, because it's really where the rubber meets the road for sure.
And then just again, a process check here. When Jennifer and her group come back to us next month with those recommendations, we're then passing that on to the township, who is then going to let contracts. Is that going to be the process going forward?
I think that's the expectation. If
Okay.
I mean, fictitious numbers, if there's 8 buildings identified that are appropriate with very minor repair and paint, and there's 2 buildings that need a roof repair, that an RFP could be issued for those by the township to get that process going. if there's another group of buildings, 7 or whatever that fictitious number that I'm saying now is, whatever the actual number is, then the additional assessment would be needed to say, all right, what is needed here? How would you begin the process of repair and water, at least waterproofing and stabilization?
Mhm.
So I think we'll have to see. But my expectation is if buildings are ready for minor carpentry and painting and some roof repair, that RFP then could be generated. That was part of stage 1 that was approved initially by the supervisors. That'd be my expectation.
Mhm.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And under other business, Joe, do you want to report on the progress made by the Historical Commission on advancing the registration of the site under the National Registry of Historical Places?
Right. So we had submitted, as we were closing out the master plan, when we presented to the Board of Supervisors, we got approval to update the so-called determination of eligibility, which we did. As part of that, we invited the representatives from the state's State Historic Preservation, SHPO, office to come out and visit the site. And that visit was held last Tuesday. And the main purpose of that visit was to determine what was the best way to nominate the site to the National Register. And if you recall, there was, discussions around, do we expand Edgewood Village to contain the farm? Do we actually have each of because the state recognizes that it's actually 2 farms. Do we actually do separate nominations for each farm, or do we put them together as a district? And what we concluded was that we can put them together as an agricultural district. And that is hopefully makes it a little bit easier for us because we're handling 1 nomination instead of 2. The idea about expanding Edgewood Village was really discouraged by the Pennsylvania SHPO, because to reopen Edgewood Village was placed on the National Register back in the 80s. So it's a different nomination now. It's a much more intensive, right, nomination than it was back then. So to reopen Edgewood Village, we would have to go back and actually renominate all of the so-called contributing structures, which I wasn't looking forward to. So we dismissed that actually fairly quickly and said, no, it doesn't matter. And we just kind of to say, look, there are enough connections between the 2 farms to begin to register them as 1 district. And by connections, I mean there's familiar connections in terms of who owned one, owned the other, and they were somehow related. But there is also, through Helen's research, connections around shared labor and back and forth between the 2 farms. So we were able to convince SHPO of that and go with that.
Okay.
I do want to clarify one point, Dennis, if I could.
Please.
Because it came up so I followed up with an email. I'm sorry I didn't copy you. I followed up with an email to the Board of Supervisors, since that was the motion to engage with SHPO the best way, and I wanted to inform them of the decision. And the question came back from the Board of Supervisors: does putting the farm on the National Register of Historic Places limit us in any way? And I just want to be clear that the National Register, which is the federal register, is simply an honorary register, right? It doesn't limit what we do to those buildings, how we use those buildings. We can even demolish those buildings, right? It is simply honorary. Now, it is useful because if a for-profit group was to own the farm, they could apply for federal tax credits and use those federal tax credits for preservation purposes. It's useful also because when we're applying for federal or state or even private grants, being on the National Register is prestigious. It gives us a leg up in priority over other properties. And also then, as Dan pointed out, there is some, there's something when the federal government or the Department of Transportation and all is doing, projects, they have to actually, take that into account and mitigate any effects on historic property. So there's reasons to do it, but it doesn't limit us in any way. The limitations would be limitations that we place on that at the township level. Like we have placed limitations on changes to Edgewood Village that need to be reviewed by the HARB, right? We'll cross that bridge later, I think, when we come to it. I think it is worthwhile to do that. And at some point, we'll need to decide, do we manage it separately, or do we just extend the ordinance that we have for Edgewood Village over to the farm? So even though there'll be two separate listings on the National Register, we can have one local ordinance that covers
Right.
both.
Right.
Right,
It could be
and-
locally designated and attached. Yep.
Exactly. So I just want to be clear about that, because that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of limiting what can happen with those buildings and it's our decision, meaning the township's decision, in terms of how that should be managed and how that should be governed.
Oh, that's for me, that's educational. It's very useful to recognize that distinction, that it's a separate registration, but the township can pass one ordinance that encompasses both and governs both, if that's said correctly. Jennifer, given your experience with Edgewood Village, if we get to the point where the township is deciding that those regulations, that governance, those limitations upon it, is there a need and a value for the township to reevaluate the rules of engagement for Edgewood Village as well, in terms of some kind of revision, or would Edgewood Village regulations just carry over, and that would be sufficient or appropriate?
So the Edgewood Village has historic district design guidelines, and there's an historic ordinance. If we were to extend our historic overlay and expand it to cover Patterson and Satterwhite Farm, we would basically take all of the regulations, the design guidelines, and the historic ordinance, and that would be blanketing those two properties as well. Mm-hmm. So the design guidelines we have are pretty good. We like them. They were written by a professional, and they've stood the test of time. We may want to look at them again with a critical eye, because now we're encompassing an agricultural district, which is slightly different. So there might be some other things we'd like to highlight that we'd like to have purview over, that you wouldn't normally come across in a residential or commercial historic district. Mm-hmm. But yes, we can easily modify our historic ordinance to capture the new registry.
And I think that's where that's important, is that if we bring in a nonprofit, for example, that's going to manage that, any changes they would make to the exterior of the buildings would need to be reviewed and approved by HARB. So we're not totally losing control over the preservation efforts at the farm by bringing in another third party, because, as Jennifer said, the ordinance would actually require them to have HARB review and approval before changes would be made.
Well, that's great. Good work in getting those clarifications. What's your next step in terms of readying this submission?
Yeah, having said that, we still have a lot. Well, I mean, really, there's two major pieces to preparing the submission. The one major piece is the architectural description, and I believe that we can reuse most of the work that was done by Seiler Drury. We have all of those documents, we have those photographs and things like that. The second piece is which is probably even more important, is the historical significance. When we talk to SHPO, we're going to go with establishing it as the agricultural as being the important. So that's not necessarily architectural or the architecture of the house and buildings, but the agricultural aspect of the fact that it's been an ongoing farm for 300 years. So we have a little bit of work to do around that. It's gonna take us a few months to put all of this together. So, be patient with us, but our goal would be to have a submission done by the end of the year.
Okay. Nothing like the power of a deadline.
Right.
Right. Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. Let me ask the committee, any other business? Thank you, Joe. Any other topics? I have.
Dennis, I
What?
just kind of lost thread about the environmental issues that we were talking about last time. Where did that fall? Who's looking at what needs to be done in terms of, some of that abatement that might need to actually take place before we can work on the buildings?
I thought that fell under the purview of our committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought that
Okay.
was under that umbrella of their assessment.
And do you have
That-
the input from the township, Jennifer? I mean, didn't they do an assessment of that? If I'm,
Yes, we all have in the Google Drive is the hazmat report, which includes recommendations. So we've got that.
okay.
I have another topic that just came up this evening. Thanks to Kevin Gallagher, who was served as the liaison from the Environmental Advisory Committee to the Patterson Farm Master Plan Committee, the Ad Hoc Property Committee. At one stage in the Ad Hoc Property Committee process, as we got deeper into really creating that master plan, that committee formed a program of creating what we called invited stakeholders. Of course, we want to involve all stakeholders in all meetings from a public forum perspective. But in that case, we had invited stakeholders who would participate actively in the Zoom calls along with committee members. And we identified 5 or 6 stakeholders, the Environmental Advisory Committee being one. They had a meeting earlier and are still interested in staying involved in the Patterson Farm Master Plan implementation. And so they've raised that question, will this committee develop this invited stakeholder approach, or might a member of the Environmental Advisory Committee be nominated to become a committee member here, kind of representing those interests, or do they come in through the public? It's a topic for this committee that I think we should discuss. I know we only have 2/3 of us here tonight, but that's a topic that I think this committee should address. And we can discuss it with supervisors as well. To me, it might make sense to simply have a member from the Environmental Advisory Committee be nominated or volunteer to become a member of this committee. And it's up to the supervisors, of course, to make that selection. This committee is approved to have up to 7 members. We have 6 today. So that would be another approach. Any thoughts, discussions, reactions on that topic? Jennifer?
I think it's a great idea. I think there are 2 ways to do it. We could get the supervisors to tell us which they prefer. One is to appoint somebody to sit on the committee, and the other is to have a liaison representative.
Okay.
So whatever the semantics are, the nuances of the difference of that, whether they're a voting member versus a liaison member. That's kind of one thing to think about.
Okay.
Okay. Joe, did you?
Yeah, I mean, no, I was just agreeing that that's the biggest difference. What Jennifer said, is it a voting member? Is it not? I guess what I'm thinking about is, I know we do have some environmental issues that we're dealing with right now, but do we think that'll be an ongoing topic for us as part of the implementation of the master plan? Or do we think it's more of a sporadic in terms of we need some feedback on things? And I guess that would, knowing that would kind of tell me whether we go one way or the other.
Yeah, and Kevin might call in here later, but I see the environmental connection in two broad buckets. One is, yes, there are some environmental cleanup issues that to be addressed early on. But secondly, this is an important natural nature site in the community, and
Mhm.
access to trails and ponds
Right.
and streams and fields. Has that environmental topic to it. So separate from the toxic cleanup kind of thing. So I think the idea of talking to the supervisors and getting some of their input is a good one. That makes sense to me. Ron, were you going to say something there?
Well, I think I would prefer if they would serve on the committee. I think my question is the same as Joe's, which is what is their real interest in this? But I think you just answered that. So from an ongoing basis, I think it makes sense that they would serve on the committee, since we're talking about more than just remediation, but we're talking about this being part of the community and the environment that exists. So I think, at least initially, I would opt for having them serve on the committee.
Okay. All right. I hear you. All right. Any other business before we try to summarize next steps and assignments and then turn to public comment? Hearing none. I've tried to take some cursory notes. You all can correct and add to this as need be. Under the process for new meetings, next month we will be the meeting will be held in person in the township building. Township will provide a Zoom link into that room for members that can't be there in person and need to Zoom in. The public is encouraged to come to the township for comment, and there will be a Zoom link for that public comment as well. Under the topic of nonprofit search, I will circulate the summary document with criteria to the full committee and to the township. That's Dave Kratzer, for review and finalization. Ron is following up with Pano. Joe is following up with the National Historical Society, and we have a list of other organizations that we're going to compare notes on and divide up. Jennifer provided a summary on the structural reports, and they'll be following up with more visitations and some recommendations in June. Joe has under the preparing the submission for National Registry. You have a number of months of work to do, and expect to have a submission ready by the end of the year, and we'll discuss with the township the issue of whether the Edgewood harp and those regulations would fall over this site as well. Once it is under that registry, or if there are some modifications necessary because of its agricultural orientation. I'll follow up with the township regarding liaison kinds of relationships with other committees, specifically the environmental committee. Were there other follow-ups or action items I left off that list?
Sounds like a good list.
I would suggest you did far too good of a job with that, though, Dennis. I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking for somebody to raise a hand for secretary. Did I say that out loud? I don't know if I did. So if nothing else, I would say it's time for public comment. Alex, do we have any public comment waiting in the waiting room?
There's no online public comment.
I didn't hear that, Alex.
There's no online public comment.
No online public comment. Okay. Hearing no public comment, I'll make a motion that we close this meeting at 8:28, under an hour.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for your commitment to this project. I know you all have a lot of other things to do, but it's important. So thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Good
Good night.
night.